my name is Hadia and welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well. Today I'm going to be talking about something super controversial, and that is the fact that society is not moving to the right. I know a lot of people want to tell you this. I've seen so many video essays and articles on Substack. There was one specific article that really triggered me. It was like, conservatism isn't cool actually, and I was like, wait a minute, when has conservatism ever been cool? I'm from Tallahassee, Florida, and no one thinks Republicans are cool except for Republicans. I also wanted to talk about it because as a political science student, I keep getting irritated when people say that Trump has a mandate. And by saying society is moving to the right, you are literally affirming that Trump has a mandate, which he does not. And this notion that he does is the reason why a lot of Democrats are saying that we need to have stricter or more conservative immigration policy. It's saying why we need to police trans people. And also why a lot of Democrats are just not fighting back and have voted for almost every single one of Trump's cabinet members, which is literally objectively bad for the country. So I wanted to talk about this through a cultural or social lens, but also through a political lens. So let's get into it. So when it comes to the culture, weirdly enough, I don't see a lot about Gen Z boys moving to the right or being red pilled in any of these conversations. There is a lot of content on Gen Z men moving to the right and red pill culture, but it's never included in any of the video essays or any of the articles that I read that talk about Gen Z moving to the right. A lot of it is actually just more social commentary on women and trends online. And one of the first things that I noticed was trad wifery or wanting to be a trad wife. And these people always reference Nara Smith and Ballerina Farm. But what really bothers me about this is that neither of these women are actually trad wives. Nara Smith is not a stay-at-home mom, and she always says she's not a stay-at-home mom. She is literally a model. She is a working mother. Even whenever we watch her content, she's not making it by herself. She literally has an entire team behind her, and she talks about how she has an entire team behind her, and I'm sure she has people helping her out watch her kids. She's not pushing a lifestyle onto you, and she's not even selling you a trad wife lifestyle. She's trying to sell you her cooking books and her recipes, and she wants you to just watch her videos. And her dressing up and looking pretty and cooking things from scratch is the best way to keep your attention. But she's not telling you to be a trad wife. Same with Ballerina Farm. She is trying to sell you her whey powder and her flour that she grows on her farm. And she probably does have childcare. And her husband is incredibly wealthy and the heir to the JetBlue empire or whatever. Just because you see something on your screen doesn't mean it's true, and I think this deals with the whole conversation about our generation lacking media literacy. But I think one of the reasons why being a trad wife seems so appealing and this traditional lifestyle is kind of what Gen Z and I don't know, women in general are extrapolating from these videos is because we're kind of tired of the way relationships run under capitalism. You've probably heard the entire conversation regarding 50-50 relationships, where women work a 9 to 5, contribute 50% of their income to the household, and then come home and then have to also do all of the child rearing and cooking and cleaning. Being a trad wife seems like an escape from this lifestyle. It seems a lot easier for a lot of women to just stay at home and cook and clean and watch the kids, as opposed to having to work and do that. Because the notion that a woman can work and then also do all of the house stuff is objectively oppressive to women, and it is not feminist at all. And so I don't think women want to be a trad wife or stay-at-home girlfriend because they actually like the idea of being a submissive woman on Quaaludes living at the whim of her husband. I think it's just because they don't want to work, and nobody dreams of labor, and this is just a response to that. Another thing that I keep seeing is the whole aesthetic thing. So we have the clean girl aesthetic, but also the old money aesthetic. And I think the old money aesthetic is just a rebrand of minimalism. I feel like minimalism has been around forever. When I was in high school, which was literally 10 years ago, I know I look so young, but when I was in high school, minimalism was super popular online, and I think it's because it went along with the whole Tumblr grunge aesthetic. And in the fashion space on YouTube, I saw a lot of people referring to it as the model off-duty look. So it's basically, again, 90s minimalism combined with 90s model attire or whatever. And then when I got into undergrad, people were talking about having a capsule wardrobe, and then it got rebranded into the coastal grandmother, and now it is the old money aesthetic. I think a big part of it is because a lot of people just don't have money and they don't want to be spending a lot of money on clothes. I know that there are some people who spend $1 million on Shein buying a bunch of basics, but I feel like that's such a small portion of the population. I think it's also important to mention the trend cycles during COVID. I think of just the heart denim pants and the cow print hats, which I had, but it was super loud, it was super colorful, it was kind of escapist because life was super boring under COVID, but the trend cycles were moving really, really fast. And I think in response to this like rapidly changing trend cycle, people kind of wanted something simple, but also something that was a little bit more affordable. And I think minimalism in general is just the answer to that. Of course, not everybody is environmentally conscious, but I don't think that this trend is necessarily a bad thing. I think the whole old money thing is also there because people, again, just like don't have a lot of money, but they still want to be taken seriously. And I think it is connected to like the trad wife thing because everyone's like, oh, wear your blazer from H&M, go to like, I don't know, a rich bar or hang out at a medical school so you can attract a rich man. Because again, I think women are just tired of working, and it seems a lot easier to be a stay-at-home mom than it is to be a working woman and a mother and a wife and all that stuff. Again, I'm not negating that being a stay-at-home mom is difficult because it is, okay? And I think people are just like not really thinking that through. But again, under capitalism, this is just kind of how relationships work, and I think people are seeing it in a very binary sense. Okay, also with like the clean girl aesthetic, I would argue that this is kind of progressive, okay? This is just like my opinion. I think in response to all of like the flashy makeup of the 2010s, the pendulum swung to the other side and people wanted something a lot simpler. Skincare became super popular during COVID, and I think people just embracing their natural beauty was a huge thing. And also, all of these makeup brands started to come out with shades for every single person. And so I think because nobody really had to like cover their face anymore, or like because it was so easy to like embrace your natural beauty, I think that's why the clean girl aesthetic became popular. I think obviously like the wellness I obviously think that wellness culture and all that stuff can be negative, but I do think that there is some good to being a clean girl, and I think that's just like through the progress that we've seen in like the makeup industry. But that's just my opinion. That's like a complete side note. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to talk about, which I think is more relevant to Trump having a mandate or not, is the political lens of this video. So this entire notion that society is moving to the right seemed to be affirmed by the fact that Trump won the election. And afterwards, everyone was like, oh my god, how did we not notice this? The signs were all there. But I'm here to argue that they are not. And I think we also need to like redefine what it means to be on the left and to be on the right, and just accept the fact that maybe people just have a mixed bag of opinions and we can't actually place voters in a box. This is something that I've learned through studying political science, and it's kind of like annoying. But the world is not black and white, and I think leftists have an issue with that. Okay, so the main reason why Trump does not have a mandate is because he won by 1.5% of the vote. 1.5%. That's not a big percentage, okay? He had 49% of the popular vote. 49%, okay? That's not even a majority. Another thing is that 36% of eligible voters did not vote in the election. Okay, that's more than 1/3 of people who could have voted in the election did not vote in the 2024 presidential election. So when we have a third of people not even participating, can we really say that people actually wanted Trump to be in office? No, we cannot say that. Another thing is, there are people who voted for AOC who also voted for Trump. And one of the main reasons why they said that they voted for these two people is because they were anti war, which is a progressive stance, and also that they just wanted a fighter. Now, obviously, Trump is not anti war, and these people don't know what they're talking about, but this is what it seems like to a lot of people because I don't know if you knew this, a lot of Americans are kind of dumb. They're kind of stupid. They're like actually uneducated, and it's not even their fault. So we can't even be mad at them. Another thing that I wanted to look at was policy. So on top of like all of these people being anti-war, which I would argue is actually a majority of Americans, a majority of Americans also support things like Medicare for all, increasing the minimum wage, a woman's right to choose. And we can see this through all of the like traditionally like red states that are voting for these things. So states like Florida and like Oklahoma voted to increase the minimum wage. Around 60% of Americans support Medicare for all or think that the government should be providing health care for most Americans. It's the same with like student loan debt forgiveness, affordable housing, taxing the rich. And I think this is a really important perspective because by saying society is moving to the right and that Trump has a mandate, it leaves no hope for the future. It makes it seem like Trump is doing all of these bad things and that it's okay because most people actually support it and believe it. But again, I'm here to argue that that's such a small portion of voters. It's just his like really strong MAGA base. The majority of Americans do not support what is going on. There was an entire hands-off protest which I think had like around a million people participating all across the country. CNN said it was one of the biggest protests that they've ever seen, where people were upset that Trump was cutting a bunch of funding, which led to people losing healthcare, them losing their jobs, them losing their SNAP benefits. He literally cut pediatric cancer research. And this is partly because of Elon Musk's involvement as well. And people were irritated. They were like, why is this random man involved in our politics? So because of that, people protested and also showing up to like Republican town halls where they are literally yelling at their legislator, being like, what are you doing to fight Trump? And these aren't like liberal, progressive people. These are like conservative voters in conservative cities and towns speaking to conservative legislators. And so anyway, this is all to say that nobody actually supports what Trump is doing except for like a really small group of people. And so I don't think that it's fair to say that society is actually like moving to the right, or that like all of this like should be happening because it's like what we wanted. I think a lot of people were just fed up with the Democratic Party, and I think it's really important to recognize the role that Democrats played in Trump getting reelected and honestly getting elected in the first place. Democrats talk a big game. They promise that they're going to make life better for you. They promise that they're going to invest in all of these social programs, and then they never do. And because they only feed their corporate interests, Republicans, who also only care about corporate interests, show up and lie to you and sell you this narrative that it's immigrants and like trans people who are ruining your life. And then they win elections that way because people have lost faith in the system. They have lost faith in the Democratic Party. And that's why you can see that literally, again, 36% of registered voters didn't even vote. I also wanted to say that we have to reconsider what we think a leftist looks like versus like a conservative, because the reality is majority of Americans have like a mixed bag of political beliefs. There are people who voted for Trump who support increasing the minimum wage, who support a woman's right to choose. A lot of the reason why they just vote for him is because they like his personality. And I know it's like kind of dumb, but that's kind of just like how politics work. That doesn't mean that these people are leftist. A lot of people are like the opposite of a libertarian. They're not like socially liberal and fiscally conservative. They're the opposite. They're actually socially conservative and fiscally liberal. But I think through having like more social programs and policies that like benefit everyone, we can create a society that is a little bit more community based, one that actually cares about other people. And through making people's lives better economically, we can convince them that the reason why things are so difficult is not because of people who are less fortunate than them. It was actually just the system that they were a part of. It was the wealthy, it was capitalism. But there's no one really spreading that narrative aside from Bernie Sanders and AOC, who are going on their Fight Oligarchy tour, which is reeling in tons and tons of people. So many, the crowds are huge. I think people are fed up with what's going on. And so I know it seems difficult, and I know things are really, really, really bad. I am not going to argue that they are not. But there is hope for the future. We just have to have the right people and the right messaging, and hopefully things can change soon. And I truly do believe if we did have more social programs, if we put more money into education, if we focused more on like actually helping people, people's minds would change about the way that they view others. And so yeah, this is just my opinion. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and also subscribe to my Substack where I write satirical articles that I think that you would really love. Okay, thank you. Bye.